the second episode of Dr. Von Fright's Scary Stories. Today we have an unusual lineup, since the true story brought to you by an excerpt of the diary of a Chinese doctor disturbed several people when it came out, and was completely removed since then from every initial reporting source. Being isolated in our houses due to the terrible circumstances make this story that more blood-curdling. Beware, my cronies, you might get truly frightened.
The first story discloses the truly horrifying real chronicle of a physician at Wuhan Central Hospital, one of the frontline clinicians taking care of patients that survived through the outbreak of the COVID-19 coronavirus in the province of Hubei, China, and witnessed events that, in his own words, distort between reality and occurrences that could only be imagined by the most gifted horror authors in the world. The story was extracted from the diary of the doctor and published in different well-known Chinese news media and removed shortly after by officials' orders. They never revealed his name to preserve his security. The doctor starts his story explaining how healthcare workers are one of the groups most at risk from outbreaks due to re-emerging and novel pathogens. As seen in the current outbreak, he tells how in a single center case series of the virus, almost 30% of all patients were healthcare workers presumed to have been infected in the hospital. He continues by revealing the fact that this messed with the mind of the whole staff, producing in them erratic behavior that he had never seen before in his co-workers. The log continues with one of the doctor's night shifts, where he describes the hospital as a place of mayhem and chaos, resembling more of a psychiatric asylum full of screams, laments, and wailings. People running from one place to another, completely absorbed by their own tragic situation, and where the usual basic rules of social interaction were completely disregarded and made for a surreal nightmare, almost unbearable at times. I was caring for a lot of patients as the virus overwhelmed the hospital installations and staff. I remember that just like my co-workers, I ran from one station to the next, since they rearranged the whole layout so there weren't any individual rooms attending the various needs of the people infected. The scene was horrifying to look at. I'm sure everyone has seen the video where a male in a stretcher underneath some sheets is violently convulsing from an atypical and harsh pneumonia. Some in the media believe that this video may not be actually real, but I can tell you, we saw some terrifying things during this period that could break the mental strength of the coldest person. As the night passed, suddenly one of my patients started to scream from the top of his lungs,
"Don't let them take me, please, don't let them take me."
A co-worker and I, the only ones in the area at that point, freaked out by the sheer fear of his voice. We both ran to the patient trying to calm him down and started reassuring him that no one but some members of the staff remained in the clinic and nobody had the intention of abducting him. We explained that he was in the safest place possible and we wouldn't let anyone hurt him. When he relaxed for a second, I asked him who was he talking about, who did he think was going to take him. Without hesitation, he said that a few moments ago, a man was standing in the corner of the hallway, staring at him, and he was sure his intention was to take him with him. I told my patient to describe him for me, but he retracted, replying that he couldn't actually affirm that it was a man. He said he saw the shape of a person standing at a distance, with no distinctive features, and even if you stopped to look carefully, it was impossible to distinguish a human face, but more of a blurry outline of human appearance. I'm not usually unsettled by difficult situations. Being a doctor makes me quite level-headed and practical. Dealing on a daily basis with challenging circumstances of human suffering, including illness and death, thickens the skin and sobers the mind. Nevertheless, the context of the reality we were going through had severely disrupted my character and the remarks made by my patient truly disturbed me. I was sure not to show these emotions to him and tried to be as comforting and supportive as the setting allowed me to. When he eventually laid back and started to doze off, I left the bedside and went over to a made-up physician station about 49 feet away. As I sat to recollect my thoughts and regain some composure, I glanced over to the patient and saw a black shape standing by the bed, looking down at him. As the shape had no recognizable human features, or the seal-seamed protective suit everyone on staff was wearing, I immediately thought the stress of everything and the frightening words of the patient affected me psychologically, making me envision a figment of my imagination, and I probably needed a break. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to recover some sense, and when I opened them back again, the figure was gone, confirming my assumption. I asked a coworker if he could cover for me for a couple of minutes, as I was in need of an urgent walk to clear my mind. He instantly accepted. I went to the top floor of the hospital just below the roof. Even though the clinic was completely filled and reorganized in order to face a crushing outbreak of infections, the top floor had some very small spaces that remained practically empty because they couldn't be used for taking care of patients. My mind drifted off. I hadn't had a moment alone all day, and the madness of the environment made my head a little dizzy. I was standing in the balcony of an empty wing of the hospital, overlooking a city that seemed undeniably peaceful, like it hadn't known any of the madness happening in this very building that compelled my presence. Suddenly I clearly felt a cold breeze that made all the hair in my arms stand up and gave me a deep feeling of fear and angst. I immediately turned to look at every corner available to sight, but there was no one there. The sound of the breeze started to sound like a malicious whisper, and despite the fact that I could see no one around me, I could clearly feel in my guts I was not the only presence there. It had only been about 10 minutes since I was gone, but I decided to go back because the sensation was starting to numb my body and mind to the point I felt like I was going to throw up. When I got back, a fellow coworker instantly yelled my name and ran to me. What he told me next left me dumbfounded. He said, "The patient that yelled moments ago died within minutes after you took off."